this lesson we're going to be making a smartphone illustration. So I'm only asking for one of the two, but if you're interested you can make both illustrations. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for images of the two phones that I'm going to be illustrating. So I found this picture here of an iPhone 7. So I can just right click and copy this image. I don't actually need to save it anywhere on my system. So I'm going to use the hotkey Command V to paste it. And I'm just going to place it somewhere here in the first artboard. And for the galaxy, I have this image here, which I actually did save to my system. So I'm going to navigate to it and just drag and drop it into my file. So right away you'll see a couple of issues that come up. This image is huge and is way too big for my artboard, so I'm going to use the selection tool and make sure that I'm holding shift and controlling a corner anchor point so that when I scale it, the dimensions stay the same. And I think I'm going to scale it down a bit more. Place it here. So in order to keep track of specifically where everything is, I'm going to use what are called guides. So in order to use guides, I'm first going to go to View and go to Show Rulers, and you'll see the hotkey here is Control R. So it's a good habit of, once you know what these hotkeys are, don't use the menu, but use the hotkey instead to train yourself to remember what these are. So Control R is showing me or hiding the ruler, and if I click and hold on the actual ruler, start dragging, you'll see a dotted line, and that is basically showing me where, when I release the mouse, it's going to drop a guideline and another guideline. So I'm going to, in terms of the layers, I'm going to leave these guides on the same layer as my backgrounds. And I'm just going to outline the Galaxy phone. So I can now use those guides that I've made to line up my iPhone so that they're the same size. You don't have to do this, but in cases where you want your artwork to be a specific height and length, you'll want to be familiar with how to use the guides to make sure that you do that. Now, I've kind of, in some way, solved a problem that I had initially. But you'll see if I bring this to the front, there's a whole bunch of other artwork that I'm not using right now. So we're going to get rid of this by using a mask. So if I click on this, you'll see up at the top here, and I'm using the selection tool, the mask button shows up. If I click on this button, it's basically going to allow me to create this mask by trimming the edge that I don't want, or cropping out the parts of the image that I don't want to see right now. Now, once I click anywhere other than this image that I've used to make the mask, it's going to basically finish and create the mask officially. So the mask is useful because I'm not actually deleting this artwork. I'm just telling the software I don't want to look at it right now. So I'm going to do the same thing for this white background that I have on the galaxy. And this will also just help to keep everything organized. So speaking of organization, you'll want to make sure that your layers are organized and are named well. I'm going to call this background and guides. And you'll see this eye icon toggles the visibility, toggles whether or not you can see that layer. So in some cases you won't want to see a particular layer or a particular part of the file that you're working on. So if you have it split up into layers, you can turn those on and off rather than having to move a particular thing or trying to find out what's on which layer. If you're organized and keep these named well, then it's much easier for you in the long run. The blank space next to it here is toggling the lock feature. So if I click on this, you'll see there's a line through my cursor now. So I'm not able to select it, I'm not able to move it, I'm not able to delete it. It's basically locked where it is. So if you have, like we do, these images where I want them to be and I don't want them to be changed, I don't want to accidentally move it when I'm trying to do something else, then it's a good idea to lock that layer. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the illustration of the iPhone. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to name this layer iPhone for now. It might change, but just to make sure that I'm organized again. And I'm going to use not the rounded rectangle tool actually, but the rectangle tool. So these guides are going to help me to place this exactly where I want. Now you might have this problem that I have in that the guides are just a little bit off. So you want to go back into this layer, make sure that you're not locked, and right click to make sure that lock guides is not checked off. If it is checked off, then click this and that will uncheck it and you can move this guideline exactly where it should be. So my guides are almost exact and I'm just going to get them to be actually exactly where I want them. So once I have that, I'm going to lock this again, go back to my iPhone layer and select the rectangle tool. I do want to zoom in a bit just to make sure that I'm starting from the exact point that I want. So I'm going to drag this down. See that as I drag it, the image disappears momentarily, but my guides stay there, so I can always have that reference point. So I have my rectangle drawn now, and I'm going to go back to the selection tool. Now I'm not seeing anything because both my fill and my stroke right now are set to no show or to none. So what I can do now is fill this. Now rather than picking from these sets of colors, what I'm going to do is actually go down here towards the bottom left where I have the same icons. If I double click, it's going to bring up my color picker so I can more accurately pick the color I want. So I don't necessarily have to do the colors that I see here. Maybe I want a blue iPhone instead. So I'll pick something like this here. And now I can actually see my rectangle. So now, in order to make the rounded corners, I'm going to make sure this is selected again. And in Effects, under Convert to Shape, there's Rounded Rectangle. So I want to make sure that Relative is clicked here, and with the extra width, I want both of these to be 0. So you'll see it's adding more to my shape. I don't want that because this is the exact height and width that I want. Now if I click Preview, it should show me the rounded corners, and I can see that that's not enough, so I'm going to increase it to 20 and 50. So now I can see that it's pretty close to the iPhone's size. So I'm going to leave it there at 44. And so now I have the background basically for my iPhone. Now if I need to go back and change this, what I need to do is go to Appearance here, and it will show me this rounded rectangle effect that I have. And once I click it again, it brings this up, and I can now change it if I need to. You'll also see that I can, with this transparency, as I said before, can change the opacity of it so that I can see the artwork underneath. Now if you want to make it, picture perfect, accurate, then you will want to use this feature as you're drawing the other shapes. But the other thing that you'll need to be aware of is if you're making different shapes on the same layer, Illustrator is still making layers for you. So if I change the color of this, you'll see that this rectangle is in front of this one in terms of the arrangement. So I can change this with the hotkey, which is Control and the square or curly brackets will change the arrangement of that. So we'll bring it to the front or send it to the back. Alternatively, I can do it through the menu under Object and Arrange. So you'll see the short keys here again to bring it all the way to the front, to bring it forward one layer, or send it backward one layer, or send it all the way to the back. You'll see what that actually looks like if you expand the layer that you're currently on. So it will actually show you where these are in the hierarchy or in the arrangement, and you can move them within the arrangement to be in front or behind of the different shapes. So this is basically all the tools that you'll need to be able to create this illustration of the iPhone. So you'll want to be using this to make, the different buttons that you see here. So I can make all of these, and I know how to change the colors. I know how to send these backward if I need to, so that they're behind this. The ellipse tool is going to let me make, shapes like this for the camera or the microphone. And of course when we're in class, I'll be there to answer any questions. But really all of the tools that you have and all of the skills that you have now to be able to create this design completely. But there is one other feature, I guess, that we didn't talk about yet that you will need in order to do this little 7 reflecting shape that they have here. So I'm just very quickly going to make a new layer and name that layer. And I'm going to, even without the guides, this is just as an example, I'm going to draw this shape here. And lower the opacity so I can see through it. Then I'm going to use my pen tool to create this shape. And now I'm going to change the color of this. In fact, I'm actually going to use a gradient instead. So with this gradient, I'm going to choose two colors that are similar to the real life colors. But I'm just doing this quickly so you can see how the gradient works. Now, what I'm doing here is I've extended this path beyond this shape, but I don't want to use this artwork that's outside of it. So in order to do this mask, essentially, the first thing I need to do is bring up the Pathfinder. So I'm going to go to Window and Pathfinder. So if I look at these little icons here and hover over them, it tells me what they're called and what they do. So you can experiment with these and find out how you can use these, but what I'm going to do is select both of the shapes and click this button called Divide. So it has basically cut these up into 3 different selectable shapes, but they're still grouped together. So what I'm going to do then is double click on the shapes, which basically brings me a level inside of this group. Now if I click on this excess part that I don't want, now I can just hit the delete key and it will cut that out. Now I go back out to outside of the group, and now I have this shape here. So I'm going to go back inside and bring this opacity back up on this part of the screen. And that is another tool that you can use when you have more complex shapes or parts that you need to cut out or cut into. So if you do want to make this phone as well, you can, and that is another tool that you'll need to be able to do it.